Hi there, welcome. This is Caitlin from grassfedgirl.com, and today we're interviewing Amy Fields Perrin. She is a type 1 diabetic, and she has been a type 1 diabetic for many, many years. I just wanted to say that this is not medical advice, and if you are newly diagnosed type 1 diabetic or you are transitioning to the carnivore diet as a type 1 diabetic, it's important to work with your doctor and just know that this is not medical advice, and Amy has been type 1 diabetic for many, many years. So just know that before you take any medical advice from this video. It is just purely for entertainment and educational purposes. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Hi everyone, this is Caitlin from grassfedgirl.com. I'm so excited you're joining us today. We have a big treat. We have Amy Fields Perrin. She is a type 1 diabetic and she started carnivore 16 months ago. And she has lots of wisdom to share with us about her journey and what she's learned. And I think you'll enjoy this interview a whole lot if you have similar concerns or if you have autoimmune disease. It's really interesting, so stay with us and we're going to talk to Amy. Welcome.
Hi there.
Well, thank you so much for coming on today. It's going to be fun. So what got you started on carnivore or interested in your health? And tell us your whole journey.
Okay, well, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes actually back then in 1971 when I was 16 years old. So that makes me 65 now. But in 1971, it was called juvenile diabetes. Somewhere along the line, they changed the name. So, and back then they said you can't eat any sugar, but follow these dietary rules. And the medical staff wanted me to go on a 2,000 calorie diet with lots of carbs. 6 slices of bread a day and potatoes and all kinds of food. And I knew, even at 16, that if I ate the way they wanted me to eat, that I would end up getting fat. So that gave me the knowledge that the medical, I can't think of the word I want to say, but
Establishment.
Yes, there you go. Medical establishment really didn't know about diet. So even though I was only 16, it kind of gave me the idea that I needed to be on my own about diet. And so, I grew up like everybody else, mostly the standard American diet. But by the time I got out of college, and I did some junk food eating certainly when I was in college, but when I got out of college, I became interested in health. I mean, it was the 70s. And vegetarianism was really big back then. And I became a vegetarian when I was 23. And started reading health books. I read every health book I could get my hands on. I read Adele Davis, and I read Jethro Kloss, which is a very old herb book. And it was all about, and Pavo Airola. These are names that we hardly even know anymore, but they were big in the health field back then. And I became convinced that I could heal. So I was on a journey to find how I was going to heal type 1 diabetes. And type 1 diabetes, usually nobody thinks you can heal it. Once you get it, all your insulin producing cells, which are called beta cells, are dead because your immune system somehow got everything wrong and killed them all. But I wasn't going to give up. So I studied health and nutrition and tried all kind of herbs and all kind of different diets, and stayed a vegetarian for about 20 years. And I started getting really sick at the beginning of my 40s after having diabetes for 25 years. But it wasn't the classic symptoms of getting sick with diabetes. It wasn't like my eyes or my feet. I had limited motion in a lot of my joints. I had frozen shoulders, I had frozen hips. I was depressed, I was tired, and I didn't know what I was going to do. I had 3 kids. I couldn't play with my kids. My body moved very slowly. And this was all because of diabetes, but because this isn't on the list of complications, I didn't know that. So luckily, a friend of mine sent me an article in the mail, because that's what you did back then. That was 1996. And the article was about frozen shoulder being caused by diabetes or high blood sugars. And it was written by a man named Dr. Richard K. Bernstein.
Oh, wow.
And at the end of the article, there was an offer for cassette tapes. So I sent off for the tapes, and I got them back, and he explained the diet and the low carb. He's like the king of the low carb diet, way back before it was popular, for sure. And then his book came out, Diabetes Solution, came out a few months later. And anyway, when I listened to the tapes, I began immediately. And that meant going from taking 1 shot of insulin a day to taking 5 shots of insulin a day, and going on low carb, which meant only 30 grams of carbs a day. And almost immediately, all my complications went away. I got well very fast. Wow. From complications. And I started taking a little less insulin, maybe, much less insulin. But I still, of course, was taking insulin. And I did that for a good 7 years. And I had been so preoccupied with healing, but this was like a healing for me, the low carb was. But after the 7 years, I was dissatisfied because I wanted real healing. So I found out about the raw vegan diet. And I decided I was going to try that because it was promising. It looked like people were going to start being able to heal all kinds of diseases on this raw vegan diet. So I jumped in, did raw vegan for 7 years. I had a raw food business. I made crackers. I dehydrated all these snacks, and I mailed them all over the country. Anyway, after 7 years, my husband and I, he was doing it with me, and a lot of our raw food friends as well, we all just realized that we were losing our health. People's teeth were rotting. I had joint pain all over my body. And we just looked emaciated. So we'd all decided to start eating local sourced food and start eating meat and vegetables from local farms. That was our style and it became the ketogenic diet. While I was studying and learning, I read all kinds of books. I read Weston Price. I read Deep Nutrition. I just read Omnivore's Dilemma. I read everything to convince me that I really needed meat because I had become this ethical vegan. But I knew it was the right thing to do. So then I did ketogenic diet, and I was able to lower my insulin a little bit more after that. And so I started eating, that was 10 years of ketogenic diet. And then My husband and I were traveling. We were on a trip with time on our hands, listening to podcasts, and up comes Sean Baker on Joe Rogan. And we listened to it together. And then we listened to Michaela Peterson, a podcast with her. And we just got on this, you know, how YouTube keeps feeding you more podcasts. We kept listening to podcasts this whole trip. And he says, I'm doing it. And we were on a trip. Like we weren't going to be back for several weeks. And he goes carnivore on the trip. And I'm like, I'm not quite brave enough to do that on the trip. But the day we got back, which was November 12th, 2018, I started carnivore too. And I was really hopeful that this was going to heal something. I wasn't sure what, but I felt like it was going to heal something. So that's basically how I got started.
So were you doing pretty good though on your keto diet? Were you feeling okay then?
I was feeling okay. I was feeling really good, that I thought I was feeling really good, and my weight was perfect. I felt good. It was actually easier to match my food to my insulin on the ketogenic diet than it is on carnivore. Although on carnivore, I feel a lot better.
So
and I feel a lot of improvements.
What was some of the things that you were having on keto that you wanted to do the carnivore?
Well, I didn't really know at the time, except for type 1 diabetes. And I have a hand issue that I'd like to improve. I don't know if you can see that.
Like straightening it out?
It doesn't, yeah, it's called Dupuytren contracture, and they don't open. So I was hoping carnivore would possibly help that. So far, it hasn't changed on carnivore. Probably asking a lot.
I think, I don't know, this finger never really quite goes straight. But so now when you were a kid and you went on insulin right as you were 16, right?
Yes.
And was that hard to manage as a young person?
Well, that's kind of interesting because I was 16 and I'm really kind of thinking, although I never knew that, I was kind of thinking that the doctors must have told my parents that I was old enough to do it on my own, because they never even learned how to give shots. So it was just like my job. Like I took care of it. And they were supportive, like my mother would make special recipes, but it wasn't any big deal. And because back then it was one shot a day, you took your shot in the morning, and it was one kind of insulin. It was kind of easy. And I never really had problems. They just said, don't eat sugar. And, you know, that was kind of it. And so even though running higher, well, we couldn't even test our blood back then. Back then, you only had urine tests. And I had diabetes for 15 years before I ever had a blood sugar monitor. That's how ancient it was. So it wasn't really difficult. And I think diabetes has become, or type 1 diabetes has become more difficult because we're on 5 or more shots a day. We're constantly monitoring our blood sugars. We want it to be in the perfect range all the time, because we know if it's not in the good range all the time, we will have severe complications. But back when I was a kid, they didn't talk that much about complications. And because it was only one shot a day, it was kind of easy. You just limited what you ate. So I didn't really mind. I knew when I first was diagnosed, my best friend's sister had type 1 diabetes, and she was very unhealthy, and she ate horribly. and was in the hospital all the time and died when she was 30.
Oh, wow.
I also knew a woman at church that was had 4 beautiful children. She was very attractive and very healthy. So I knew that what my effort, if I put in the effort, I would be okay. So that was a really good lesson for me very early on.
So did the did the doctors so they didn't consider carbs to be sugar, just sugar?
Right.
Okay.
I mean, and yes.
So you could eat potatoes or rice or whatever, but they just said no, like processed sugar, white sugar or something.
No white sugar. I mean, I could even eat honey if I wanted to.
Um, all right. Well, that's so interesting. Now, did you do you just do your medicine yourself, or do you have a prescription? Do you work with your doctor, or how do you do it?
Well, I'm kind of weird because I didn't trust doctors in the beginning. Um, I'm trying to figure out how to talk about this. I actually use the insulin that is so old, I don't need a prescription for it.
Oh, wow.
So I buy my insulin from Walmart for $25 a vial. I use the R for my food, and I use the N to cover me during the day and during the night. And because I've had diabetes for so long and I've been kind of self-monitoring myself for so long, I'm really good at it. And you couldn't tell. I mean, I'm a little bit reluctant to share this because I know a lot of people just want to do what their doctors tell them to do, and that's great. I kind of work on my own. I have a naturopath who's also a friend of mine who will, if I want a blood test, I can call and go to him and get any kind of blood test I want, or if I need a new prescription or anything, I can get one through my naturopath friend. Well, he's my doctor too. I have a lifetime prescription for syringes through a mail order company. So I used to have to go every year to get a new prescription. There's all kind of crazy rules that they make you follow to be able to do this that are going to cost you more and more money, like going once a year to get a new prescription for your insulin. I mean, for your, insulin too, if you're on that kind of insulin, for your syringes. But I discovered that you could have a thing called a lifetime prescription, and that's what I have because, well, that's what it's going to be probably.
Well, I mean, you don't have to share anything you're not comfortable sharing. So, yeah, but that sounds like, I mean, you're a pro. You've been doing this for so long. I mean, I think it's different when, you've had so much experience and you've had so much just feedback from your body and trying different things. So you know what works for you. So what was it like when you went carnivore? Did you have to adjust your medicine or what happened then?
Well, actually, I'm on probably just a little bit more insulin than I was when I was on keto. Not much, but it's about the same. So I didn't really have to adjust it because actually protein does need insulin to be metabolized. So I'm on about the same amount of insulin. When I first started carnivore, I had to take potassium and magnesium or I would get a lot of muscle cramps. I had to make sure I drank enough water. Now I don't get the muscle cramps anymore. So it's been 16 months. So that went away maybe after a year. So I guess my electrolytes are in their own balance now. I had diarrhea for the first 6 months. I had what else did I have?
Most people would give up if they had 6 months of that.
Well, it wasn't bad. It was just loose stools if I went, so it wasn't horrible. And it stopped after 6 months. So, and then, what else? That was it. And I believed in it so much after I listened to all the podcasts and all these improvements that people were getting that had autoimmune diseases and other problems, that I wanted to stick with it. And I also really enjoyed it. I felt more nourished. I just felt like I had tremendous energy for the first time in my life. My sleep improved. I had all kinds of improvements. So I wanted to stick with it.
Well, that's great. I mean, sometimes people give up in the first couple of weeks just because their digestion is weird and they don't know. They just get freaked out. So what is kind of your eating schedule like?
Well, we've been eating eggs and bacon for breakfast every morning since we started keto. Bacon has been my vegan recovery food. So bacon and eggs for breakfast. And we eat 3 meals a day, even though a lot of carnivores don't. I really believe that it's better for type 1 diabetics to eat smaller meals so you don't tax your system as much as a big meal would. Is my picture still?
It looks fine.
Okay, because it went away on my screen. So.
Oh, I still see you.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to check. Lunch, we usually have either my husband and I will split a ribeye with maybe a couple of pieces of bacon, or we split a ribeye. So I'm not eating a lot. I'm eating like 4 to 6 ounces at a time. And I make sure that I eat the fatty end. And then for supper, we'll eat a burger and some bacon. That's about it.
Do you eat dairy or?
Occasionally I eat some cheese, and I have a real, I've been getting this amazing butter from a farm in New Hampshire, and it's bright yellow and it's beautiful and I love it. So I'll put that on the steak or on the burger. I have thought about quitting dairy, but right now I'm still eating it.
Well, I know for me, the amount matters. Like I can get away with a little bit, but if I eat too much, then I start feeling pretty bad. So probably the amount that you're having doesn't sound like a lot. So, and what about organ meats?
I will occasionally eat, usually chicken liver. Sometimes I'll wrap it in bacon. Like I said, bacon's my vegan recovery food. Sometimes I'll wrap it in bacon, or sometimes I'll make a pate. And I just can't really stomach any of the other organ meats. So if it's anything, it's going to be chicken liver. Yeah. We used to eat, when we first went ketogenic and my husband was trying to heal his teeth. I shouldn't talk about that, but anyway, I did. We would eat beef liver and onions, but I had to put lots and lots of spices on it, and I had to have lots of onions, and it was okay. But now on carnivore, I'm not eating onions and I'm not eating a lot of spices at all. So it's just chicken liver. I can't do the beef liver anymore.
I think people should start with chicken liver, and I think they start with beef liver and then they get so grossed out and then they're scared forever. And it's like, well, you should have started with chicken liver. Or people think that there's such a difference in the nutrition, but I really don't think it's that much. And chicken liver tastes so much better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, so you said you don't really have to worry about your electrolytes now. Do you,
No.
you just salt your food?
Yeah, I just salt my food and make sure I drink a lot of water. Well, not a lot, 2 quarts of water. And I'm fine.
Have you noticed any, do you think there's any differences for people who are a little older starting out?
That's an interesting question. I don't think there's any difference. And I've lived my life where now, well, with always being curious and always being open to try new things, always. And I don't think that 65 seems old to people who are young, but I don't feel old. I feel really good. I have great energy, and I've got more wrinkles than I did when I was young, but I feel great. And we live in a house that has four flights of stairs, and I'm up and down the stairs all day long. So, but anyway, your question was, I don't see any difference at all. No, but maybe it's because all my friends are old. I don't know. I don't know.
Well, I
I
think some people just when they're, maybe they would think it's too late to start or something like that
well,
because they're set in their ways or,
it's hard for me to say because I've been a diet experimenter my entire life. So I I haven't eaten anything but real food for the last like 44 years. I haven't eaten junk food for that long. So it's not a big step for me.
well, you sound like somebody, I mean, I think sometimes a lot of carnivore people are very similar. Like they've tried everything else and, they
Yeah.
they want to keep getting better and keep trying things. Um, so what, let's see, what would you tell somebody who's new to carnivore that's maybe nervous or wants to try it, but they're a little scared?
Um, well, I'd tell them that I'm doing really well on it, and I've had a lot of improvements in my health, and it's worth it, and it's a lot of fun, and it's easy to go shopping because all you have to do is buy the meat you like. Um, and that I'd recommend some of these great carnivore books. Sean Baker's book, The Carnivore Diet, is a really great place to start. And I'm in the middle of reading the Emmerich's book, Carnivore
Good.
Cookbook. I just started that one yesterday, and I also have Paul Saladino's book, The Carnivore Code. So, and to just watch podcasts of all those people too. And I tell them about Kelly Hogan and her podcast, and Ken Berry. I've listened to a few of their podcasts lately, and I that's what I tell them. And now I'd answer questions. I'd answer their questions. My husband's sister just went carnivore, and she's loving it. And she's been carnivore for a month now.
Wow.
And we visited them when we were on our trip. We just got back from a 65-day trip across the country, and she started while we were still there, and she loves it. And then her husband came home from his business trip, and he started it, and he loves it. So, and they're similar to us in age, and they're loving it, and they're not having any kind of problems. So
It's great. Yeah,
work.
my dad is doing it. He's 74 or something like that.
Yeah.
So, you can do it. So, you guys travel a lot. Is there any special challenges with that?
Well, I'll tell you, it's the easiest diet I've ever traveled with because you can go into a restaurant and get a steak or a burger. I actually travel with my butter in a plug-in ice chest because a lot of restaurants don't have real butter and they don't even know it sometimes. They think they have butter and it's really just the whipped margarine stuff. So, yeah, it's been the easiest diet. It's a lot easier than, what's in the salad dressing? Does it have any sugar in it? And all the questions I used to have to ask about, when we were doing keto or even low carb. I'd have to know everything. And now it's just bring me a piece of meat and don't put any sauce on it.
Yes.
A lot easier.
Do you have any sugar cravings or cravings for anything?
No, I don't. I feel, well, I just quit coffee.
Okay.
I was a real coffeeholic, and I knew that I needed to find out if coffee was causing any inflammation. So I quit just a few days ago. So I'm doing okay, and I don't have sugar cravings because the meat satisfies you so much that I don't even think about food until it's time to eat again.
Well, that's great about the 3 day. I started with 3 meals a day and then I kind of gradually shifted to 2, but I think it's definitely good to start with 3 because you're giving up so many other foods.
Right.
And you don't want to let yourself get too hungry and then fall off because you are too hungry to make a good decision,
Right. Yeah, I agree.
So do you think you'll stick with this for a while?
I'm planning to. I don't see any reason. I wanted to tell you about a couple of other of my benefits
Yeah.
that I've found. So my hair used to be more gray. It went back to my original color. I mean, I do still have some gray, but it's nowhere close to as much as it was because it just looked gray, and now it looks like what I had when I was younger. And I was kind of, I know what happened the first 6 months. I had to blow my nose and cough up mucus for the first 6 months. It was crazy. But when we flew to Moscow in Italy last year, well, not last year, well, it was last year, last fall, I used to have ear pain when I flew, like horrible pain that I just avoided traveling by plane anywhere because it was so painful. But we had this chance to go to Italy and Moscow so my husband could teach painting. And I was really nervous, but I decided I was going to do it anyway. And I had no ear pain on the flights, none at all. And I was so happy. And that was a big deal to me. I might still have to take insulin and I might have my hands all messed up still, but I've had so many improvements that I don't think I'll ever go back.
That's amazing. Yeah, your hair looks like you did some kind of expensive, balayage treatment or something because you had like nice,
little gray streaks, a little
different colors. Yeah, you paid a lot for that. That's awesome. What do you think that was due to? I mean, the ear pain going away.
Well, I think it all just drained out. I think that there must have been one of the toxins that are in vegetables, and I certainly don't know which one. It might have been oxalates, it might have been phytates, whatever, because it was draining out for the first 6 months. And I think they just drained. And I never had ear pain at any other time except on the flights. And I never knew I had a problem until I was on an airplane. So maybe some kind of vegetable toxin. I really don't know.
Yeah, or just reduced inflammation and
Reduced inflammation. Because
congestion.
Also, yeah. Also in carnivore, like I lost like 5 pounds. That's all. A lot of people do carnivore so they can lose a lot of weight, but I was already pretty skinny, so I lost 5 pounds. But I think it was all inflammation that I didn't even really know I had because my face is thinner, and I look, my veins stick out more now and stuff like that. And I wasn't like that before.
Do you think your body composition changed, like to be more muscle? And
I do. I think I've lost a lot of fat and I've gained muscle. And, I work out I don't go to a gym. I do calisthenics. I do like push-ups and sit-ups and sit-up variations and stuff. And that's really all I need. And I feel, as muscular as you can always gain more muscle, but I feel as muscular as I want to be now.
that's awesome. I mean, because I know a big problem for women is bone density, and their posture goes. I mean, my grandma's like a foot shorter than she used to be, and I mean she's 98, so she's still doing pretty good. but it does happen. So we need to do everything we can to.
We do.
And that does not include, I think, eating a bunch of whole grains or vegetables or things that we're taught to do.
Right. Well, I'm really thankful for the carnivore diet because I still pose for my husband's paintings. I've been doing it for the last 35 years. And we used to think, well, there's going to be a time when you can't do this anymore because you'll look old, and who wants a painting of an old woman, right? And I don't look old in paintings. I can still model for him, and it's really awesome to be able to do that. It's partly, I could do it on the ketogenic diet too, but a natural diet is just really important to stay youthful looking. And I do think I look a little more youthful from the carnivore diet. And he can always ignore wrinkles.
Yeah.
When he's me.
In-house Photoshop.
Right.
Well, you look amazing. I mean, you don't need anything. You guys go check out her pictures on her Instagram, Amy Fields Perrin, and she looks awesome. And I mean, I'd say you'd be, 15, 20 years younger than you are. So, well, is there anything else you want to tell people before we sign off?
I don't think so, but I'll say that if you have any questions, you can get in touch with me on Facebook or Instagram, and I'd be happy to, just DM me because I love answering questions. And I know there's a lot of, I will say, there's a lot of type 1 diabetics who are trying carnivore. There's a Facebook group called Type 1 Diabetic Carnivores. And it's a great group of people. There's like over 300 people on that Facebook group. So that's one thing I wanted to say, because you can ask questions on that group even before you become a carnivore if you're just interested in it. But I'd be happy to answer questions on my Instagram messages.
So it's Amy, Aimee Fields, and then Perrin, Perrin, right?
Yeah.
And I'll link to your Instagram down below in the description box, so you guys can message her if you have any questions. And well, it's been really great, Amy. I think people will learn a lot from this, and I appreciate your time. And we will talk to you soon. Have a good day.
Thank you, Caitlin. Bye-bye.